Hi, everyone. So we're back for part two, looking at the autumn sessions. And today we're starting with Jeanette Aitchison, who is a quantum life coach, and she works with Joe Dispenza and the Neuro Change Solutions team. And she's going to spend some time with us, helping us to create mindset and easy ways to do that. So hello, Jeanette.
Hi, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much for asking me to join you today.
So where would you like to start? What do you think is the best way to start to create your day?
Well, I think this is such a fundamental point, and it's one which is the first starting point really for any of the clients that I work with, is to let them know that how they intend their day to go is probably one of the most important things that they can do before they even get out of bed in the morning. And this is something which one of the first things I always get from people is, oh my goodness, but I have so much to do and I don't have enough time and I've got kids. And I hear that and I completely understand. I have 3 children of my own. But what I find is that when I take time, which I do every day, to make sure that I am prepared for that day as well as I can be. And it's not about what I want to do that day. It's about how I want to be today. So if I know that I have a busy day coming up, then I am going to make sure that any of that busyness is covered by me putting out there that I am going to deal effortlessly and calmly with anything that comes my way. So when people tell me that they don't have time to create their day, I would say actually you do have time, and it's a choice, and that if you don't take time to create your day and to have the intention behind that, then you're pretty much on the back foot for the entire day and are reactive to anything that comes your way. And I know the difference between time to create my day and when I don't. And it's not a long process. So for me, I would take time to think about how I want to feel today. What are the things that are coming up and how am I best going to be able to deal with that? So for example, if I've got children to deal with, then I want to make sure that I am loving and heart-centered and present with them. Likewise, my husband or any parents, or if I'm, whether that's at school or whether that's any friends that I'm meeting, I want to make sure that I turn up as the best version of myself. If I'm dealing with meetings, then I want to make sure that I am feeling that I am in my most empowered place to deal with that I'm clear with my communication and that I am clear with what I want to get out of those things. If I've got a journey coming up, then I want to make sure that I have an intention that that journey is going to flow smoothly, but also that anything that is coming to me, whether it's a curveball, whether other people could see it as a disaster, that I see that as, okay, somehow in some way I have had some impact in this happening to me. There is a gift in it somewhere. How can I change my reference point for what is happening to me in my day? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and actually I think that the very first couple sentences in there, the difference between what do I need to do today versus who do I need to be today. I think that is such a huge mind shift for a lot of people, because they're all like, do, rather than I need to be centered. I need to be clear.
Absolutely.
I need to be calm. I need to be heart-centered. That being to start your intention for the day. I think that's a beautiful place to start.
Absolutely. And I think there are various elements to it, and not all of it comes from the thinking mind, right? And this is something, and you and I've spoken about this many times before, because in order for us to teach any element of this, you've got to walk your talk, and you practice this and I practice this, and it does work. And I know that all of my intention, my heart-centered coherence, that the deep breathing, all of that is what has, quite frankly, got me through not just lockdown, but many other events which have come my way. And I've thought, oh, I didn't intend that one. Where did that come from? But, there's a gift here somewhere. And there is also, and I'll speak more about this later on, but there's also an intention around how you want to end your day. So if you haven't had the day go quite as smoothly as you intended it, then ending your day with intention is as important as beginning your day with intention. And that's mostly to do with the energy that is around that. So I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. So the work that I teach very much believes that we are all made up of energy and that we all have an influence over that energy. And that whatever you are putting out on an energetic level is what you are drawing back to you on some level. And we all believe that, or certainly a lot of people believe, that they have no control over that. And I would like to suggest that actually you do have more control over that than you absolutely realize. But it's incremental baby steps, okay? And it's like anything, if you want to change something, you have to be very consistent about it, particularly around habits, okay? And for me, being able to be calm, resilient, to be empowered, to be uplifted, to be clear, and to be very present are all states of being which in the past were very aspirational for me. I went through a period of my life when I was hugely reactionary to everything that was going on around me. And I was suffering from what I probably think, with the benefit of hindsight, was probably undiagnosed depression, where I felt I had no control over everything. My body was sending me all sorts of signals saying, oh, come on, wake up and smell the roses. I was getting monthly shingles on my body, and that was all being treated in a very in a very medicinal way, shall we say, not certainly treating it from how I was reacting to the stress that was going on in my life. So everything that I have subsequently learned over the years has completely changed that state of being for me. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know it works. But you have to do it. You have to do it consistently. You have to do it every day. And when people say they don't have time, I would actually say, to be perfectly honest, you can't afford not to. And if you say to yourself that you don't have time, then that is an intention. I do not have time. You're telling yourself you don't have time, and that's what you're going to create. If you say to yourself, well, I do have time, even if it's just 5 minutes, and you could, whether that is getting up 5 minutes earlier, or whether that is taking 5 minutes out of your morning, or whether that is whatever your routines are during the day, I can guarantee you there will be 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, even half an hour, which you could gift yourself every day. And taking that time makes such a difference to your life, because if you don't do it, then, as I said at the beginning, you're always going to be on the back foot. So that's for me, that has absolutely worked, but it's cumulative. And in the same way, there's that classic Jim Rohn quote, which is that you can't hire anyone to do your push-ups for you. You can't get somebody else to do this, because the only person who can feel what you're feeling and think what you're thinking is you. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes complete sense. And yeah, you can't negate it. You can't delegate it to somebody else to do.
You can't.
And it's interesting as well, because when you start with that intention of the morning, because, when I'm doing some of the heart math work or breathing training with people, the men in particular, like, oh, I don't have time. And I'll sit them down, hook them up to the M-Wave. And you can see just in a couple minutes how much changes in their system with their heart variability and the brain waves. And then I'll say to them, I said, what did that feel like time-wise? He goes, oh, well, like 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, that was 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Start to finish. And they're astounded that once you actually lose your grip on time, everything changes. Right?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And we do get so caught up with it, because it is, the way that we have all been programmed is to live our lives by looking at the clock. And now, what with the smart watches, and you know, it's become even more of of a guide that, well, I wouldn't even say a guide, if you like, just a very strict master by which most people live their life. Yeah, I don't wear a watch, right? There's a very long story around that one,
No
but
watch.
I don't wear a watch. So yeah, I think that the deep breathing you mentioned there, which for me is a crucial part of my day as well. That's not necessarily about having an intention around my day, although I do use it at the beginning of my day. But it is very much a tool in my tool bag, which I use numerous times throughout the day. And I actually use it together with a couple of other techniques, which are, once you get into the neural programming and you start to rewire your brain to remember to do this stuff, right, it becomes really helpful. So for example, I am one of those people who, because when you're in that stress response, when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling oh my goodness, there's not enough time, there's too much to do, in that moment you are sending that survival stress response to your body, and your body responds by pumping the adrenaline from your adrenals right into your solar plexus. And as you know, that's why you feel the stomach churning, as we know, that's why you feel that fabulous word discombobulated, and you start to feel, some people feel a bit sick, and I feel it very much in my stomach. I've trained myself that as soon as I go into that response and my stomach starts to feel tight or churny or knotty, I let my stomach go completely. I let the muscles in my stomach go. And it, posturally, it might not look great for a few minutes, or a few seconds, should I say. But as soon as I let it go, and it's kind of that Buddha belly, letting your stomach hang for a second, you are counteracting that stress response that you've just had. And I do it along with two other relaxation responses. One is to let my shoulders go, and it might actually require me to do this first. And the third one, and this was a little technique that I picked up from the fabulous Dawson Church. I don't know if you've read any of his work, but the third one is to let your jaw go and just relax it in that moment. And once you've got your jaw, your shoulders, and your stomach relaxed, you're sending an instant calming signal to your body. And then you start even just a couple of rounds of really deep belly, Buddha belly breathing, when you're breathing deeply into your stomach, and then you're exhaling, and also exhaling with an auditory sound that your brain can pick up on as well. Yeah. Ideally for longer than, I'd say about 4 to 6 seconds with each in-breath and out-breath. And when I do that, you are instantly, as you know, you're instantly calming down that fight or flight survival response. And I use it many times a day. I use it if my kids are fighting around me and I'm standing at the sink or the oven cooking the meal, and I can sense myself getting a bit anxious with what's going on, I use that technique. If I am going into a meeting, I use that technique just to settle my stomach. If I am in a conversation with my kids, or my kids are 13, 11, and my daughter is 9 going on 19. So sometimes I have to do that in the middle of those types of discussions, right? And the reason that I do it is because I know when I feel those stress responses, when I feel that any of that anxiety building up within me, I know that it's not serving me. And I know that in those moments, I'm actually causing physiological stress to my body. And I know the long-term effects of that. Obviously, that's what was happening to me when I was having all of my shingles attacks. So yeah, I've learned to do that, and it's super effective. And I also, I combine that with a lot of my intention work as well. So at the beginning of the day, I'll sit, do that relaxation, belly, shoulders, jaw, as I'm getting coherent before I write my intentions for the day. And I say write because I think it's important that you get some kind of physical evidence of your intentions out into the world. The fantastic author Mike Dooley, who wrote Notes from the Universe, he speaks, his great phrase is, thoughts become things and words give them wings. And when you take the time to not just think it, but to write it and also to speak it, you're speaking your truth, you're speaking your intentions, you're putting it out there in a way that, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the being energy and your state of being is pulling that reality to you, you are going to be experiencing much more synchronicity between your intention and what shows up for you than if you just think it and don't put it out there into the world. So I hope that that resonates with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And I think, especially as parents with kids,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
a lot of parents have really stressful mornings. And I know when I was growing up, because we had 5 of us in the house and I had to get off and out to school, mostly fed. That was always a very stressful time. And I remember saying to myself when I had kids that I didn't want my mornings to be like that. And so I set an intention around that, you know, I get up early enough to have my time, which means getting up, sitting, doing some intention setting, thinking about all the things I'm really grateful for, and then doing a meditation in the morning, and then getting up and getting the kids a cooked breakfast, getting them up for school. And it's just, we have a buffer of a whole hour where they have time to get showered and dressed and sit down and have some food, and because they're up early enough to do that. And you know, I'm not the best morning person in the world, but I've something that I've intended that to change, and I've intended and created a different situation. And so I actually really enjoy our mornings before we go off to school for that reason. And because we've started like that, the rest of my day is in that really nice, slow, easy pace, rather than I've started the day with my head cut off running around like a chicken. So, and that was one of the key intentions I started with when the kids started school, and it's made all the difference, you know, and that consistency that you speak about. And I think as parents as well, and when we're trying to create new habits and we fail, it's a learning experience, but it's also an experience to not beat yourself up for failing, because things happen, you know, like if a child is up in the night or you're broken sleep and that kind of stuff, things don't always go according to plan. But the intention to see things be in a calm cycle rather than a stress cycle, I think is a good place to start, you know. And also just being kind to yourself, that creating new habits takes a lot of commitment and it does take a bit of time, but when you get it right, it really is worth it. You know, it's worth the effort to try to make those simple changes. And they're not big changes, they're just simple changes.
You're absolutely right. And I think you mentioned a key word there, which is kindness, and particularly kindness to yourself. And I think that as busy mums, it's very easy to not prioritize ourselves at all, and to put the children first. And to make sure that, you know, their needs are being met, which of course that's what we do as mums, right? But and this is, I've had to learn this one in quite a big way over the last few years. If you are not being the best version of yourself in every day, and that includes giving yourself that time to think about how you want to be today, to give yourself the time to get yourself in the right mindset for the day. If you're not taking time for that, then you can't show up as the best version of yourself. And if you can't show up as the best version of yourself, then no matter how much you love your children, you're not showing up as the best parent within you either. And I actually think that and I know, because I know how reactionary I was before I learned to prioritize my self-care. And by being a calmer version of me, a more heart-centered version of me, that enables me to be a better parent to my children. And that is part of the reason why I began the wonderful journey that I did, because I knew that it was not just about me, it was about my children. And if I wanted to up my game as a parent, and I wanted my children, because let's face it, what we're doing here, every time we react, or every time we perhaps get anxious and we're, you know, come on, we've got the bus to get, or you've got to walk to school, or you haven't eaten your breakfast, or where have you put your homework, or have you got everything you need? You're then, as the children get older, particularly when they get to their teenage years, you are programming that stress response within them as well. And I would much rather that my children learned how to deal effortlessly and gracefully with any challenge that comes their way. That's not to say that they're so super relaxed that it's like, oh, nothing matters. It's not that at all. It's just about showing them and modeling the emotionally intelligent way of being. And I think you're right, getting up early, and a lot of parents will say, oh my God, you know, I really need that time. I need my sleep. Yes, you do. But it goes back to what I said before. I know the difference when I do it, when I don't do it. And I would say, as a parent, you can't not do this. You can't afford to miss doing it. It doesn't have to be a huge process. And I just wanted to share this with you, because I know you and I've spoken about this before, and these are really great tools that I use. So I get up in the morning after, I would say, I've practiced thing as I lay awake is just appreciate everything I have. So whether that is my comfy bed, my pillow, my, you know, whatever it happens to be, is just thank you for everything and all the comfort that I have around me. Then when I get up, I have journals that I use, and I use these with my clients, and I gift them to all my clients. And I also, I've given a lot of them away to my friends, and I know you have one too. I use the Intelligent Change 5-minute journal, and there's a children's version as well, because I think it's very important if you can, I mean, they are the 5-minute journals. I do spend a bit longer than that doing mine, but that's because I like writing a lot more. And what's really nice about it is it gives you things to be grateful for. And my suggested way of looking at that is something in the past that you're grateful for, something in the present that you're grateful for, and something in the future. Being grateful for things before they happen. Don't forget that that is an intention, so you have more of a way of drawing that to you if you're being grateful before it happens. It says what would make today great, and that goes back to the state of being rather than doing. And so thinking about how you want to show up in the world today, and yeah, what is that definition of the greatest version of yourself that you would like to show up as today. And then it gives a little end at the bottom for how you can reflect on your day, what went well, celebrate that. Tiny wins are as important as the big ones, because we tend to forget the tiny wins, and we don't tend to celebrate the things that we do well. You know, even if you did manage to, I don't know, cook one healthy meal for your kids, that's a win, right? In the busy day, that is a win. Even if you did manage to, you know, get them all out the door on time without anybody having a crossword, that's a huge win. And if you manage to sit and listen to them doing their reading, or you manage to help them with their homework, tiny little wins like that. But also, you know, if you have managed to catch yourself during the day before you go into any stress response and manage to do some breathing, huge victories. And in that moment, you've been loving and kind to your body, and you have, you've been not just psychologically kind to yourself, but physiologically kind to yourself as well. And then this is just a you know, a shorter version of this for the children. And I think that with my children, you know, they would write things like, oh, well, I'm grateful for my Lego, or I'm grateful for my Xbox. Yeah, grateful, which is all lovely. But it's also making them think about the slightly deeper aspects of that, you know, and we're always having a discussion about how we can make our children more appreciative of what they do actually have in their lives. And also I would say, you know, when you're at school today, how would you like your friends to treat you? And they'd say, well, I'd like them to include me in their games, or I'd like them, to perhaps wait for me at break time or lunchtime, and just to be really friendly and nice and kind to me. And I say, well, okay, well, maybe you should have that intention too. Rather than always expecting others to do that for you, they will be a reflection of how you're being, right? So it's making sure that your children have thought about how they want to be today as well. So that is a very, you can just talk about that over breakfast. Okay, your kids don't have to get up and sit quietly for 5 minutes before they do that. I would say that's your time. But yeah, doing it over breakfast, and having your journal out as well, or it doesn't have to be a journal, but just making sure that you've said to them, I'm going to be like this today. I am going to be really present with you, with my husband. I'm going to make sure that I read you a story at bedtime, whatever it happens to be. Put that out there, and do your best to be that way. And then I also spoke a little bit about intention at the end of the day, and this is important for a few reasons. We hear people talk about the benefits of sleep, and we know about that, but for me, it's about the energy and about the thoughts that were in your mind before you go to sleep, which is super important. Partly because what you expose yourself to in the last hour before your mind will process 60% more than anything else it has experienced that day. Which is why I don't advise people to be watching the news, or to be looking at Facebook, or to be doing any of this stuff just before they go to bed. And you should really be putting your phones down, ideally, or any electronic equipment, about an hour before bed. But I appreciate that's not always possible for people. But certainly we're super conscious about the quality of the nutrition that we consume, and we know all of we understand what it is to nurture our bodies, but actually nurturing our minds is as important, and being very aware of the quality and the, if you like, the nutritional element of the information going into our heads is as important as what you are physically consuming. So for me, I would make sure that I was exposing myself to uplifting, empowering, loving information before I go to bed. And that includes directing it at myself as well. So if I've had a day and things have gone well, I celebrate that. If I have a day and things maybe threw me a few curveballs, I will look for the gift in that. And if I have had things which could have gone differently, I'll reframe it. Like, well, how would I have preferred that to have gone? And I'll go back and I'll replay it in my mind. And there's a lot of evidence that actually this has quite a profound effect on you. And certainly if there's been disagreements, particularly with spouses or partners, I think it is important to get as coherent as you can, again, by deep belly breathing and relaxation, and just to think, did I react well to that? Could I have handled that differently? And to never be afraid to say, do you know what? I'm really sorry about that. I could have done it differently, and I appreciate you. Thank you. And going to bed in that as well. And then having an intention for what you are going to, for having a good night's sleep for a start, but then also for how you're going to be when you wake up. That you'll wake up energized, that you'll wake up having had, a full night's sleep, that your body will have, had that wonderful time to rest and repair whilst you're asleep, and that you look forward to a new day tomorrow. So intention is not just a thing that you do first thing in the morning. For me, intention is it's an ongoing process.
And it's interesting with the nighttime thing too, because again, I'm a natural night owl. So to go to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning and then be up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, obviously not getting enough sleep, enough that I was okay with that. But that gradually has changed as I've become more aware of the sleep and more the importance of the hours before midnight. And I had to laugh the other day because when we were interviewing Simon with the nutrition and back to school talk stuff, that's what I was like listening to my dad, who always used to say to us, it's the hours before midnight that count, and actually there's a lot of truth in that, which is really interesting. So for people who are very nervous about having to get up a little bit earlier to create that gentle space in the morning rather than that rushy space in the morning, starting with 15 minutes back and another half an hour back in time, and it is trickier with teenagers because they go to bed later. And I've got to the stage now where during the week I'll still get Abby down before me, but sometimes on the weekends I'm in bed before she is. And I've just had to accept that, well, that's just where we are at the moment, so there has to be some flexibility in that. But yeah, just trying to get to bed that little bit earlier. To, again, with those intentions that you were already, before you put your head on the pillow, your intentions are already becoming part of your natural thought process.
Yeah. And I think as well that so you mentioned there about teenagers going to bed after you, and absolutely. Just when you think, it's always been like this with kids, isn't it? You just get them into a routine, and then their development changes and the whole routine changes all over again with sleep patterns or whatever. So it changes. The only constant, and being resilient in that face of change, and that ability to adapt to whatever is happening in your surroundings, that's the core of why we're having these discussions, why we're giving people these tips and tools to make themselves resilient and strong in whatever's going on. But I think with my kids, they'll say things. The older two, the boys, they have phones. My little girl doesn't yet. She wants one, but she understands she's not getting one at the moment. And the boys will, from the very beginning, we were very strict around, we set the restrictions on your phone, and the phone goes off at 9 o'clock at night or whatever it is, and it doesn't come back on again until 7 o'clock in the morning. And all electronics are taken and they go in my husband's office overnight, and they don't have any electronics in their bedroom. And that is particularly important. And I've explained this to the boys, and they do understand that in order for them, who are still growing, to get the best night's sleep possible, that sleep needs to be uninterrupted as much as it can be. And that means not just uninterrupted by phones pinging in the middle of the night, but also uninterrupted by the electromagnetic frequencies that they are or are not sleeping in. So there's a lot of study which has been done into electromagnetic frequencies, and they're around us all the time. But having a phone which is constantly pinging either beside your bed or, even worse, under your pillow, seriously impacts the quality of your sleep. And I know that this is a challenge for a lot of parents with teenagers, but when I explain to my kids what is actually happening to them if they do that, so for example, I know how it affects me, and I know that on the odd occasion that I have put the phone beside my bed because I was tired and I forgot to turn off the Wi-Fi, when I wake up in the morning, my head is throbbing and it feels foggy. And so I feel a very distinct difference between that and when I sleep in a clean electromagnetic atmosphere at night. Likewise, they shouldn't be carrying, and I know a lot of kids do this, but putting phones in your pocket and carrying it on your body, people do it once, and they don't see the fact that there is a long-term implication of all of this, and that with all of those electromagnetic frequencies pinging through your body, it's not going to have long-term health benefits. So for me, I've explained it to my children, and when you explain things, they're more likely to understand it. They do say to me things like, oh, look at this, so-and-so was sending messages at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I say, well, do you think that that person has had the best night's sleep possible? Well, no. Do you think that they are going to be as alert as possible at school the next day, or be ready to learn, in the best way possible? Well, probably not. And you don't know what information is being exchanged during those middle of the night texts either. So I know that it can be a real challenge for people over this, because I do appreciate that it's, you know, teenagers, of course they need to be kept in touch with the outside world and their friends who are their world. But I think when you explain to them what they're actually doing to themselves, they do listen. They might not think it's cool to listen, and they might not tell you in the moment, but they will listen, and they will thank you for it at some point. So I think that's hugely important.
Being consistent with it is the other thing, because I think some parents will start something and then forget to keep doing it. But actually that nighttime thing, and I mean, we're parenting from 2 separate houses, you know, which is really tricky. And I know some of the moms in my practice that I speak with are really struggling, because there's such different values between houses, and especially when it comes to phones at night and stuff like that. So, and I know with ours, like Abby, like there's no screen time after 9 o'clock, and the Wi-Fi goes off, and we have an app that we share between the 2 houses that is just locked off time. So she's gone over time, she's done. She's got no more smartphone for that period of time. Although she can make phone calls and just simple text, but all the smartphone capabilities are gone. It's shut off. So, you know, she can ask for more time if she wants to. She's not always going to get it. But and the phones are downstairs in the kitchen or in the living room at night, and they're on airport. For that reason, I think when I listen to her phone, if I forget to put it on airport, her phone is dinging from the age of 12 and 13, and now she's 14, till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just like, what are these parents doing that these kids are on the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're 12 and 13 years old? You know, and I think it's not a healthy place for them to be either, because when you look at the research studies on the dopamine chemicals and the pleasure, and it's kind of running the same lines in the brain centers as cocaine, you know, so that pleasure seeking and seeking behavior becomes an addiction. So expecting a child that age, and actually even expecting adults to monitor their use of a phone, it's not going to happen in those age groups. So you actually need to sit down and explain how it affects their brain, why it's important that these signals aren't part of their sleepscape, and their rest and the rejuvenation and their developing brain growth. I think that's really, really important, because they say it's not just you being mean. It's actually backed up by healthcare and self-care. In terms of teaching them how to be resilient with it and how to monitor their own interactions on the phones.
And
you have to monitor it as a parent.
You're totally right. And I think that, explaining it to them, and when they say to me things like, well, why am I the only person that, you know, that does this or has to do this? And although, you know, I'm not a single parent, I do have, you know, my understanding of what it's like when you've got 2 different households that do things differently. I like when my parents look after my kids. So, my parents will parent very differently to me, which includes copious amounts of chocolate, sweets, you know, let's not go there. And I've had to learn over the years to just breathe through that one, know that my parents adore the children, but for the length of time that my kids are with them, I'm probably going to have to put them through, you know, a tiny bit of a broccoli afterwards. So, but although, you know, they do respect what I request with regard to the phones and the Wi-Fi. But I think that, making children understand that it is for their longer term benefit, and that the only reason that, you know, these other children or other friends are not being subject to perhaps the same restrictions as them is because they would probably see it as a disadvantage, you and I would see it as a benefit of having parents that have done even just a tiny bit of research around it, and that we're always doing it from that perspective of wanting the best for them. And then I find a very funny thing with my kids, which is that, you know, they might roll their eyes or moan at me in the moment when I say, right, come on, give me your phone, or turn that off, it's bedtime. When I'm not there, they sound like me. So, you know, they'll repeat some of the stuff that I've said to their friends, and they will teach them why they should be doing it that way. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's great, thanks, maybe you were listening.
I'd
So
be surprised me that, yeah, there was one time she came down, she was, so and so had this problem, and what do you think I should do, and what do you think they should do? And I listed off a couple things. She's like, I said, why? She goes, well, that's exactly what I said.
yeah, exactly.
Oh
That's
my
just,
God, she actually listens.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Just surprise. Which
And
is
I noticed in particular, you know, my middle son Henry, he's very much like that. He's very much the, you know, the wise one when it comes to giving advice and resiliency, you know, coaching to his friends, which is lovely. Yeah, it's really lovely. But
sweet.
but no, and I think that all of that is, everything's connected. We know that, right? It's all, whether it is the energy that we sleep in, the energy that we wake up in, what we feed ourselves, you know, what we consume, both nutritionally and, you know, from an information perspective during the day, it all has a huge impact on us. And one of the other things that I would say when it comes to resiliency and anxiety and stress is be super conscious about where you're putting your attention. So intention is one thing, attention is another. And whatever you are putting your attention on, you're putting your energy into. And if you're putting your energy into it at all, you are feeding it and it's growing and expanding. So whether that be appreciation for what you have, or whether it be blaming and complaining something that's going on outside of you, it will be growing depending on your attention. So if you are surrounded by people and things and information that uplifts and empowers you and makes you feel that you are in control, or you do have some influence over the world around you, then that is going to leave you feeling much more resilient than if you are putting all of your attention and energy into observing things which are depleting that. So, and by that, you know, and I know with everybody going back to school, there is a lot of fear and anxiety around that, and about the changes that everybody is experiencing at the moment. Now, up here in Scotland, our children went back to school a couple of weeks ago, well, 3 weeks ago now, I think. And yes, there's changes, but you know, everything is fine. And I think everybody has adjusted to it quite easily. Children are very adaptable. And I think how they adapt to it will be a direct reflection of how you adapt to it. So if they see you becoming very anxious or stressed about it, or if you're you know, if people are blaming, whether it's the government or the schools or the teachers or the, you know, the politicians or whatever it happens to be, you know, all of those things might be going on anyway, and there can be things which you feel that you have no control over. But there is absolutely one thing that you do have control over. You absolutely do. And that is the choice of how you think and feel. And if something is not making you feel great, then I suggest that you withdraw your attention from it. And in that time, it's like, well, this isn't helping me, this isn't serving me. If you're standing at the school gate and there's a lot of parents who are going into the fear stress response, walk away and know that getting involved in that is not going to help your resiliency at all. If you go home and you are then able to, if you like, settle down at home for the evening and show your kids normality as much as possible, then that is where we need to empower ourselves and our children to see the world that way. Because if you see the world as a big, fearful, dangerous place, that's all that your that's all your eyes and heart are going to look for. But if you can actually come at it and start appreciating everything that you do have, and I know that this might sound really alien to people who perhaps have not been living in that energy, but it really is a matter of when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And the only person who can do that is you. And it is a choice in every moment as to where you are going to put that precious energy of yours. And I would ask people, if you want to be resilient, you have to get really good at being self-aware of your behaviors, self-aware of your choices, self-aware of your attention, of your intention. And when you start to become that way, then you can choose in the moment.
That's outstanding. And actually, I think that's a beautiful point to kind of wrap things up on. And I think that, to me, that's the starting place, isn't it? That self-awareness,
It
setting
really is.
intentions, knowing that changes need to happen. And this is a really good time to keep building resilience. And that's how you do it, is starting with that self-awareness, and starting with setting intentions for the day, starting, before you're falling asleep at night, to kind of go, well, how am I going to be? And those small, simple changes that suddenly recreate not only the daytime, but the life that you're living in those consistent moments, and it's moment to moment to moment.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful place to start doing that.
It is, and there are ways of supercharging it. And you and I, whether you have consistent and regular chiropractic adjustment and care, whether you have great organic nutrition, whether you supplement it with naturopathic or homeopathic care, all of that. But the one thing that I would say, and we can save this for a masterclass for another day, is very much, I'm also a Qigong instructor, and it's very much about learning to build that energy that is around you and putting your attention and intention into the energy field that is around you, within you and all around you. And when you start to do that, then you notice a lot of sync magic happening in your life. And we'll save that for another day.
Yeah. Oh, I really felt that.
I felt that too. I love it. That's what I do.
You and all around you. Oh, how well do we know that? I love that. That is so good. So thank you so much, Jeanette. And so I'll have more details underneath everything. And I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise and all the things that you have to share with everybody. Because again, some of this is going to be new to some people, and other people who've been with me for a while will know that we talk about this a lot in the office. And it's just nice to be able to kind of get more of that into the greater energy around us at the moment for the things that are going on, to help people get through these uncertain times and the kind of shifting carpets that we're on, and just help to create more resilience just by beginning with those small steps of setting intention and where the attention is. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for asking me to join you today. And I think that for anybody who does watch this afterwards, I would just leave them with that little quote that Einstein says, that we cannot solve a problem with the same energy that created it. So that if something is not working for you, then the first thing you need to look at is your energy and where you are focusing it. So we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Lots of love. Thank you. Bye.